Hey, Ryan. Ryan. Ryan Reynolds. What is up, guys? So today we are back with another video on the Nightmare Cup. So just for anybody who isn't in the Discord, I did get a invite to regionals, but I haven't done any research on it yet. So I wasn't honestly like confident that I was gonna get in, so I haven't done like any research whatsoever, so it's about time to start doing that. So we're gonna get through today's video and then tomorrow's video, 2 versus videos of course again this weekend, and then we're probably gonna do a couple of videos on the regionals. We may do like 2 or 3. I don't really want to do like deep dives on regionals because I feel like most of the content, like, either it's been touched on before or it's just so vast that it's going to be nearly impossible to cover like all of the Pokemon that we want to do. So I may think of some interesting ideas. I may do a video on like a super meta team and then maybe a video on like a super anti-meta team maybe. I don't know. It's still unclear at the moment. Let's go ahead and get started with today's video. Today we're actually looking at the dark/poison typing. So yeah, we've already done a whole video on the dark typings inside of the Nightmare Cup, but we haven't looked at the dark/poison type. A lot of you guys wanted to see a versus video on either Alolan Muck and Skuntank, or Drapion and Alolan Muck, or Skuntank and Drapion, or, you know, however everyone commented it. So I figured, you know what? Let's just crush all of this with one big video. We're going to take a look at all of the dark/poison typings and kind of see which ones are more formidable than the others. So first up, I did actually take a look into Alolan Grimer and Stunky, just because back when we could have had Cantonian Muck, a lot of people were saying Cantonian Muck versus Cantonian Grimer was actually a thing. So I decided for this subset group of people, I did want to take a look at both Alolan Grimer and Stunky just to kind of make sure. But the only comparison that I gave them was to their evolutionary form. So here we actually have Alolan Grimer versus Alolan Muck, and then we have Stunky versus Skuntank. So I didn't compare them in any other way. I just kind of, once I got to the end of like comparing them to their evolutionary counterpart inside the Nightmare Cup, I was like, okay, it's a done deal. No need to really look too much further. So let's actually go over this really fast. So Alolan Grimer versus Alolan Muck here. So Alolan Grimer actually can be maxed out in the Great League because he actually maxes at 1374 with 15s across the board. At level 40, he can actually be completely maxed out, perfect IVs. Alolan Muck, though, can max out at 2757, so we're definitely going to have to forfeit some levels to get him underneath this 1500 CP cap. 0 on attack, 15 defense, and 15 stamina at level 20.5 does yield you a 1496, which does yield you the best stat product that you can possibly get inside of the Great League. As far as our base stats go, you can see that they kind of have a very similar spread here. The attack stat is their middle stat, their defense is their lowest stat, and then the stamina is actually their highest stat. So in any way you slice it, Alolan Muck definitely does have better base stats than Alolan Grimer, and even whenever you factor in this level cap and the CP multiplier and all of that information, Alolan Grimer only has 67% of the bulk that Alolan Muck has, and 85% of the max stat product that you can get out of Alolan Muck, which in turn means that Alolan Muck is 1.47 times bulkier, and it has a 1.17 times more stat product yield than the Alolan Grimer. So inside of the actual Nightmare Cup, Alolan Muck just makes a lot more sense. Even when it comes to their moves, I did take a quick look into their moves. Alolan Muck has more options. He actually gains the fast move Snarl, where Alolan Grimer only has Poison Jab and Bite. And then Alolan Muck actually has Dark Pulse, Acid Spray, as well as Gunk Shot and Sludge Wave. The only difference with Alolan Grimer is that it actually carries Crunch instead of Dark Pulse, which I do feel like gives it a small bit of merit. I do feel like Crunch is just such a powerful move, but it also carries Gunk Shot and Sludge Bomb as well, so there's not too much variation. I feel like Muck just has more of a toolkit, more stat yield. Like he he beats Alolan Grimer in every scenario here. Moving on to Stunky versus Skuntank here. So Stunky actually can max out under 1500 at level 40 with 15s across the board. At perfect scenario conditions, we do end up getting 1151 on our CP there. Skuntank is a little different though. Maxing out at 2358, we actually need to have a 0-1 attack, 15 defense, 15 stamina at level 24 to hit a 1495, which does give us our best stat product yield. Looking at our base stats, very similar here again. So our attack is our middle stat, defense is our lowest, and stamina is actually our highest. Works the same way for Skuntank here. In the same vein as we took in our first little look here, Stunky actually has 63% of the bulk that Skuntank carries and 69% of the stat product, which means that Skuntank is actually 1.56 times bulkier than Stunky and 1.43 times more stat product yield than Stunky actually has. Now in terms of moves, very similar here again. So both actually carry Bite as a fast move, except Stunky carries Scratch, Skuntank carries Poison Jab. In the charge move area, we actually carry the exact same charge moves. Crunch, Flamethrower, and Sludge Bomb are on both Pokemon, so kind of in my opinion, any way you slice it, Skuntank just makes a lot more sense. So, now that that's out of the way, let's actually get on to our big section here. Alolan Muck, Skuntank, and Drapion. So these are your three big dark poison types in the Nightmare Cup. And whoa. So going over Alolan Muck really quickly here again, maxing out at 2757. We've already talked about our IV spread, his base stats. He is actually the bulkiest and has the most stat product out of these three Pokemon, which I thought was interesting. Skuntank here, which I thought was definitely going to be second, is third in bulk and stat product. And then Drapion actually has that second slot because of this big 202 defense. I feel like that's a massive amount of defense. He actually ranks second in bulk and stat product here. So Skuntank we've already talked a little bit about, maxing out at 2358. We've already talked about IV spread, his base stats, and we mentioned his bulk and stat product. Drapion though, we still need to go over. So maxing out at 2453, he's a big boy. Ultra League is just, oh, it would be so awesome to have a maxed out Drapion. So with a 2-on attack, 15 defense, and 14 stamina, at level 23 you can actually hit 1500 on the dot. We've already talked about Drapion a little in a deep dive, so if you guys are more curious about Drapion than what I talk about in this video, definitely go check out that deep dive and kind of get a feel for a little bit more in-depth on Drapion here. With Drapion's base stats, 180, 202, and a 172, whew, that's pretty big. That's a big boy. In this versus video, what I decided to do is actually take all three of these Pokemon, figure out their most generalistic moveset. So not looking at them as a specialist, definitely looking at them as a how much coverage could they get? And then taking those numbers and comparing them to try to figure out which one kind of fits the generalist role better. Now to achieve this generalistic view, I basically took which moveset just kind of wins the most matches. And for Alolan Muck, we end up going with Poison Jab, Sludge Wave, and Dark Pulse. That moveset itself seems to yield the best generalistic view. Now, if you wanted to have a more specialized Muck, of course you can switch out for either Bite or Snarl. I definitely feel like Bite makes a little bit more sense than Snarl, but there's merit to both. And then you can actually just keep running with that Sludge Wave, or if you want to be cheeky, you can go with the Acid Spray, try to get some debuffs going in there. And then Dark Pulse is a really safe Dark type move to carry as your one like out to those Psychic types. Skuntank, of course, is carrying that Poison Jab, Crunch, and Flamethrower, so you could definitely say that Bite makes him a little bit more of a specialist, which I do agree. And if you're interested in that debate, I actually have a deep dive on Skuntank in the Nightmare Cup, which you should definitely go check out and see if that's more your fancy. And then on Drapion, we actually go with Infestation, Aqua Tail, and Crunch, and there are a lot of merits to having that moveset, but as we learned in the deep dive, Bite actually makes a lot of sense. Like, it has a really good performance in terms of its numbers, but in terms of a generalistic view, Infestation is definitely going to help out a lot because you're going to end up hitting 2 typings for super effective damage rather than just 1. So, taking a look at those movesets, let's compare some matchups here. So in a 0 versus 0 shield situation, so in a closing type situation, our Alolan Muck actually ends up winning 67.2% of those matches. Skuntank is actually at 68.7%, and Drapion falls to 53.7%. So definitely gonna go with Skuntank winning the shieldless scenario here. Then we actually have a 2 versus 0 shield situation. So in the scenario where we actually have 2 shields versus 0, so when we actually have 2 shields and our opponent doesn't have any, Alolan Muck does 98.5% wins, Skuntank actually has 100, and then Drapion has 92.5. So here again, Skuntank definitely comes out on top. Next, we actually go into a 0 versus 2 shield situation. So when our opponent actually has 2 shields and we don't have any, Alolan Muck has 13.4, while Skuntank is 11.9. Drapion, though, coming in with 14.9 to actually take the win. Next, we have a 2 shields versus 2 shield situation. So in an opening type situation, if you will, Alolan Muck has 67.2, Skuntank is a 59.7, and then Drapion actually has 65.7. So that means Alolan Muck actually does the best as an opener. Then in our last scenario, I actually have a 1 versus 1. So this is just kind of a even playing field scenario. The way that it's been explained to me, at least, is if you ended up using 2 shields to save your Pokemon, you're not really in an advantageous matchup to begin with. So a 1v1 shield scenario kind of gives the most evenness to both players whenever testing out a Pokemon. So in that 1v1 shield scenario, Alolan Muck actually has 67.2, Skuntank has 71.6, and Drapion has 62.7. So here again, Skuntank taking the cake. So, yeah. You can kind of see where the generalist lies, which is very, very cool. Very, very interesting there. So in a dark poison type scenario, which Pokemon should you actually be choosing? Honestly, I feel like the dark/poison typing being only weak to ground makes it just so good as a generalist anyways, because it can go up against almost any Pokemon and hardly take any super effective damage. In the Nightmare Cup, at least, there's only a handful of Pokemon that have access to ground type moves. So you're not really like looking for anything that can actually just flat out kill you. You're actually going to be able to go up the majority of the meta with a really strong typing, and you're going to resist way more than you're actually going to take super effective damage for. So in a generalist scenario, it kind of makes more sense to have that dark poison on your team as the generalist, and then have your other dark type Pokemon a specialist towards the actual dark purpose, taking out those psychic types. So that's just my way of thinking, of course. You guys can have your own sense whenever you're making your own teams, but for me, that's what makes the most sense. And if that's the case, Skuntank seems to be the best. I can't argue with these numbers here. He wins 3 out of 5 scenarios. Like, it's not even close, considering Drapion only wins 1 and Alolan Muck actually only wins 1. Skuntank seems to be, oddly enough, the worst in bulk, the worst in stat product, but the best in matchups. Interesting. That is actually all that I have for the dark and poison typings. Very, very interesting typing. I definitely think that most teams will already either have a dark poison, or if they don't, they're gonna need one. I definitely think that it's a subset of Pokemon that almost is like a 4th typing in the cup, if you will. It's not at all an actual typing that you should be considering like that, but it is a definite like I definitely think you should have a dark poison on your team. No matter which team composition that you're going with. We talked about 2x2x2, the 2 cubed, and we also talked about the 3D. And in the comments of that video, there were quite a few people that were talking about a 3P team, which I think could be interesting to look at. I haven't done too much research on it, but I definitely think it would be cool to have 3 psychic types on a team, because you completely could wall out a lot of the fighters. But if 3P versus 3D happens, and then that brings the question, what if you have a 3F team? What if you have 3 fightings on your team? Of course you're going to be weak to those psychic types, but you're going to be able to just wreck the 3D team. Very, very interesting. It's super cool that this meta is so rock, paper, scissors that we can discuss topics like this. It's just very interesting. So, I definitely think that you should consider adding a dark poison onto your team. If you're looking for a generalist in your team, then I definitely think that Skuntank is a great candidate for it. If you want to get cheeky and try to do some stat debuffing and things like that, Alolan Muck could be your guy. And if you're looking for just a general, like, I can hit a lot of things for super effective, Drapion's definitely your guy. It really depends on what you're looking for to fit into your team. It really depends on what your play style is. There's a lot of factors that go in, and from there, that is actually going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you guys like to like videos, make sure you do that. If you don't, you could be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in those comments below. And until our next video, I will catch you then.